Hello everybody, it's Mandarton from Gaming Impaired, and I'm doing what is effectively my first review. I wanted to review this game because it's been a series that I've cared about for a very long time, and I'm just taking a crack at reviewing it because I do have a lot of things to say. I'm going to try to keep my points brief. I was typing out bullet points. I actually have my notes here, and I have now a couple pages of notes, which is like typing and typing and typing. So let's move on. Going to start out, obviously I do recommend it. If you've never played a game in the series before, I do recommend either playing the previous games or looking up, like a plot synopsis of the previous games, because I don't think this particular game stands alone very well. And if you are a fan of the series, then you've already gone out and paid for it and probably played it a couple more times than I have, so you don't need my recommendation. So, let's start with all spoilery stuff. By the way, I'm doing this all basically in one take, so forgive me. Bugs and, bad mechanics. So this game crashed for me, I want to say a total of 8 times. 3 times were when I was trying the respec thing. I got the respec glitch that a lot of people were complaining about, with the total freeze up after respecing your abilities. I got 3 crashes from having the audacity to load my hard save file. That was a lot of fun. And third, I had 2 crashes in the first 30 seconds of the final boss. Yeah, I'm not sure which of these last 2 is my favorite, but after reloading and replaying the final boss, another thing that happened is it would play fine without crashing, but the music for the first section would be completely cut out, and so I'm just fighting the guy in silence with occasional dialogue, and it kind of really made it anticlimactic and took me out of it a little bit, but it ramped back up, but we'll get to that later. Next, the jumping thing. The jumping thing is bad. I've played a fair amount of games that have jumping. This is probably the worst that I've experienced. It clearly isn't coded properly. I don't even really know much about coding, and I could tell you that. Other people have complained about this. It looks like many times that you're able to jump over something that should be really easy, and it just kind of doesn't register that you have jumped over it, even though if you look at it, you're over it, and it just kind of pushes you back, or it does that annoying sliding thing that you do. You slide off of pretty much everything. You know what I'm talking about, like... And sometimes it looks like I shouldn't be able to jump over something at all, and you can. That's the problem, because it's very misleading, and it makes you think, oh, well, I might as well try jumping over this. And there's a lot of hills in this game. There's a lot of hills, a lot of mountains, a lot of rough terrain, and that can get very annoying, because you'll be climbing up a hill, and you're like, I'm almost there, like I'm gonna make it, because my objective's right here, and there's just one little spot of terrain that the game is just like, nope, you're not jumping over this. And you gotta just go all the way around, and that can be really annoying. I've almost filled out entire maps in the game world by trying to get to one little spot that has my objective on it, and it just added a lot of time onto my playthrough. Next, the loot scanning thing was also really bad. I'm very glad that I'm not the only person who voiced concerns about this. I really thought it was just going to be like, well, if you've seen my channel, you know that I'm kind of a different kind of gamer. I have some sight issues, so I thought, oh, well, maybe it's just me. No, other people have complained about this. The scanning thing, the audio recognition thing isn't very good. I mean, if you've watched people doing Let's Plays, I've seen people just spamming the scan button going through, and that kind of breaks your immersion a bit. Also, they don't light the loot up nearly enough. If you're in a well-lit area, things kind of just blend in when you're doing the scanning thing. And what really bugs me about it is when you break it down, it's adding extra inputs on the part of the player. I've never done any game programming, as I said before, but I've listened to people who have done it, and they've said when you're adding extra inputs on the part of the player, that's basically something you don't want to be doing. It just takes away from playtime. Looting should be something where, just I kill all the enemies and I can just sleepwalk through the looting, get it done. If you play the previous games, at least on the console, you can kill everything. You've got like your arrow keys. You cycle through all the things that are lootable, and then you can just press X or A or whatever and just, go right to it. and just do it quickly, and it really speeds things up. This kind of really slowed it down, and which kind of sucks because a way that could have made it better exists in the game. You have a compass thing that lights up the bottom of you in the general direction of where something that you can loot is, but it only works in certain types of missions or certain types of side quests, and then only certain types of side quests where you actually have to search for something, and then only certain types of those where it's like, if you've seen our few videos of our first look at this game, we're walking through it and a character will just be like, something's here, we should probably search for it, and we kind of made fun of that a little bit. It's just annoying, and it's not good. It takes away from game time. Moving on, combat. This is kind of a big one. Combat, I have a lot of positive things to say and a lot of negative things to say. First off, it was clearly a massive overhaul of the series from a combat stance. Players that like the action RPG elements of it will be pleased. I think it works well. I personally don't care for it, but there's nothing really wrong with it. It can be fun and engaging. I personally prefer the tactical option that they have. I liked that they added that in. I feel like it gives you a lot more control over how the battle progresses, which can be really handy in, the harder difficulties and the boss fights and stuff like that. Most notably, it makes stealth. Stealth actually works in this game, finally, in Dragon Age. I feel like stealth never worked particularly well in the previous Dragon Ages. I would do stealth on a character, and as soon as I took control away from that character, there was a pretty good chance that we're just going to break stealth and go and attack somebody else. Here, with the tactical mode, it doesn't really do that. It still kind of does it in the, action RPG side of it, but in tactical mode, I can put my rogue into stealth in the start of combat, of course after putting on barriers and everything, because you got to do that, and I can tell them to move to a certain position, behind an archer or a mage, and get them in, the best flanking position for them to maximize the damage and take that particular enemy out of the battle really fast. Which is good, because you kind of really need to identify those ranged enemies that are going to, do a lot of damage to your party fast, so you want to get rid of them quickly. It makes bosses a lot more enjoyable. It makes a desperate situation seem not so bad, where you feel like if I just think about this long enough and, do the right positioning, even if I've only got like 2 health potions left, I can still pull it out. Actually, I wish I had recorded this. I was doing one of the dragon fights, and I accidentally, my party members, because the AI is bad, I'm going to get into that later, used pretty much all my health potions within the first few minutes of the fight, and I had only gotten 50,000 of the dragon's health down, and he has like 200,000 health, and I'm like, crap, I've got like 2 to 4 health potions left for this entire fight, and I haven't even dented him yet, basically. And it took a long time, but through careful positioning, use of barriers and stuff, I was able to pull it off before, I died. I mean, it was a lot of fun, and I felt really good about it after I did it. I mentioned barriers. That brings me to the next thing. There is no heal ability. There's no heal spell like there were in previous games. Now, I'm not just going to hate on it, because they did make it work. There are essentially barriers for mages now instead of heal, and there is guard for warriors. Now, the reason why I don't like that is it's essentially the same thing as heal, except now it's something that's more annoying to do, and you have to manage it a lot more carefully. Guard, if you read the description of guard in any of the abilities that give you guard, it's essentially, they say it adds extra health. It's just you're taking additional damage. I think there's a little bit of armor effect in there, but I'm not sure. Here's why it's a problem for both barriers and guards. I know I already said that. This game was screaming for the older tactics system of the previous games. If you've played the previous games, you'll remember there were a whole lot of tactic gambits where you could set situations where if your warrior is surrounded by 3 or more enemies, use this ability. How good would that be for guard? I mean, there's so many guard abilities. Well, there's a couple. There's like War Cry, which makes it so if you're surrounded by a number of enemies and you use that ability, you gain guard for each enemy around them, and it also taunts them to control aggro. Here's the problem, and it's why I am on the side of people that think the AI is not good, is that with guard and barrier, the computer almost never uses them correctly. I'll have my warrior, rush in to try and get aggro, and they'll see, oh my god, there's one enemy! Let's use War Cry! And you'll get the smallest amount of guard that you can possibly get out of that, and it's gone almost instantly. Whereas if I had a tactic that's like, use use it when there's 3 enemies around you, then you can get maximum guard. And I just found it very frustrating. Same thing with barriers. If I didn't have, everybody close together, there was a good chance that if one of my enemies or one of my characters, was down to low life, the mage would just immediately put barrier on him instead of putting it on, getting everybody together and putting barrier on all of them, so I don't just waste barrier. Because, sometimes, your rogue is down to a little bit of health, but they're stealth or they're out of the way of enemies, and you want to save your heals or you want to save your barrier, and the computer is just like, no, I've got to use barrier right now. Here's what the tactics system in Inquisition is kind of weird, because they've limited the tactics system to essentially 3 things. It's behaviors now, where you have 3 options, where it's enabled, which means they'll use it when they're going to use it. I don't know. It's up to the computer. Preferred, which is they'll use it more frequently. I guess when that happens, again, up to the computer. Or disabled. And I just could not rely on it at all, for guard and barriers at least, and I ended up just disabling those 2 abilities. Same thing with stealth. It's just in tactical mode, I wanted that extra control, and it would have been nice if it was a little bit out of my hands, but I could not trust the computer, and it put me in too many bad situations. Did not like it. But, as I said, it was still good, its combat was still fun, and I guess if I had to narrow it all down to one thing, I would say a lot of the problems with combat could have been solved if they just kept in the out-of-combat health regen. They don't have that in this game. Any damage you take in battle is gone. That's still there. I mean, it's not gone. It's still there, and you have to burn a health potion. There are a limited number of potions you can carry also. And when you're out in just a regular world, that means a lot of backtracking if you're not really paying attention to your battles, which means that you have to basically pay attention to every single trash fight in the higher difficulties. I'll just be walking through, here I am going to my objective. Oh my god, it's a bear and a wolf. And okay, let's see, get the guards up, get the barriers up, and I've lost some health. I gotta burn a health potion. Crap, I'm already halfway through my health potions. Gotta fast travel back to camp, start the process all the way over again. It was irritating, and it's not that it doesn't work. Again, it takes additional time off of your gameplay. I mentioned boss fights. The boss fights were mostly good. The dragon fights were a lot of fun. Certain boss fights, however, just felt like this guy has a lot of health. You take some off. He gets a barrier. You get rid of the barrier. He take off some more health. He gets some guard. You get rid of the guard. You take off some more health. Rinse, repeat. And it's not at the most, maybe they would just bring in some more enemies or something like that. And some of them were just boring, but most of them were enjoyable. I already mentioned the AI. I guess one more thing on the AI is they're sometimes good about taking potions, but other times, like I said, they'll use a potion when you think like, oh, I can afford to save it for now, and you can't really just count on the computer unless you just disable that tactic altogether. Alright, so the world. The environments are very, very beautiful. I was in awe at most of them. Very atmospheric, even though at times the music isn't playing. I'll get into the music later, but basically there's a lot of times where you're kind of just walking through dead air, essentially, and the music constantly playing would have helped a lot. A negative to the environments, while there is a lot of variety, yes, and they're very beautiful, but sometimes it feels like there's just a lot of empty space where you're kind of just traveling, and there's not a whole lot to see other than the landscape. I would have liked to see more towns and villages. Sometimes there'll be like maybe 2 villages max to an area that you can go to, and they're like a little blip on the map compared to everything else. Redcliffe was surprisingly small. I think Redcliffe in Origins was actually bigger. There'll be tons of little villages that are like a couple of houses and maybe like 15 people, and that's like on a good day. It's just not a lot of that. I mentioned the landscape with the jumping thing. There's a lot of hills. It doesn't feel like an open world. It feels like you are very much, you don't get that feel like in games like, Far Cry or Skyrim or Red Dead Redemption, where it just feels like, oh, look at that cool thing off in the distance. I'm going to go check that out. And here it'd be like, oh, look at the cool thing off in the distance. Here's a mountain in your way, and there's no way around it. So, enjoy the skybox. You know, you feel very just locked in to your area. So the areas, it's just not an open world feeling. I guess we're moving on from the worlds. Another thing about cities and villages, I would have liked to have seen more of Orlais other than just kind of landscape. For example, you go to Val Royeaux, which was, again, very beautiful, but I think Denerim was actually bigger than Val Royeaux. Denerim in Origins, that is. When you went, there was more to see there. Whereas Val Royeaux, you're kind of just in what is effectively a market district, or like a courtyard, with just a lot of pretty scenery, and it's rather small. I would have liked to see the Orlesian capital instead of just the Winter Palace. It would have been cool if you could explore, you know, the capital a little bit, because I guess that's described as being very beautiful in the books. Maybe you could just explore it a little bit, and it's like, okay, we gotta go to the Winter Palace now, or whatever. Maybe there's some shops or something. I don't know. Just would have been nice. It would have made the world feel a bit more full, rather than just this massive area of open, empty space. I guess that's good for all of the gameplay stuff. So now we're getting to story. This is still non-spoiler stuff, so don't worry about it. I'll just say all the story missions are awesome. They are very unique. There's a lot of variety into the types of missions that you're doing, the types of enemies you have to kill, the strategies that are involved. I'll use the Orlesian mission as an example. The Winter Palace, that was a nice change from the rest of the game. They clearly borrowed a lot from the Casino DLC, the Citadel DLC in Mass Effect, so that was good. Again, but the downside to that, it's just a shame that there are so few story missions. And I think there's fewer than 10 actual story missions. And here's another problem with that. Side quests. If you've watched Zero Punctuation's review of the game, he feels like you're often weighed down by 100 different things. I kind of felt that way too. A lot of the side quests feel like they're just insignificant and have not much to do with anything other than that specific scenario right then. They don't really affect the greater story at all, and you have to do a lot of them. You have a power meter, which is you need to fill up your power meter by doing side quests to advance the plot, essentially. Like, eventually you'll get to a point where you need 40 power to get to a story mission, and that means a lot of side quests and a lot of other stuff. Nowhere is this a bigger example than the Hinterlands. The Hinterlands, the thing I noticed immediately upon my second playthrough was, wow, I hate the Hinterlands even more than I thought. It does not endear the game towards replay value, because you're just, wow, I've got to do so many of these useless things just to get to my next story mission and level up. And that's another thing, with the non-scaling level system, you can only do so much in the Hinterlands before you're not getting any XP benefit from that. And that kind of makes it so, you know, like story missions are like recommended levels. So you feel like, wow, I gotta do so much stuff before I'm even the right level to do these story missions. And the Hinterlands is just so big and vast and annoying. And like I say, if it weren't for the fact that the story itself was so enjoyable, I don't know how much replay value this would have. There was a strong presence of Origins and Dragon Age 2 in the game. Like I said before, I think the game it doesn't stand on its own very much. It feels a little bit more hollow without that extra info. Side quests, I already mentioned side quests. That was a car beeping. The perks. The side quests also give you perks. You need to do a lot of them. You need to gain an Inquisition power rating to get a perk. There's only so many perks you can get. They kind of balance that out, though, with the agents. If you find random agents, you get them to your cause, you can, you know, get an additional perk, so you don't have to spend that perk point because, you know, they'll be like, you need 4 perks in this particular tree to get the perk that you want, and if you have a couple agents in that particular category, that saves perk points. So that was good. I thought that was a good addition. Also, the war table. I thought the war table was mostly good. A lot of the war table missions added a lot of flavor to what you were doing. It really felt like you were not seeing, but you were learning about the actual influence that you were getting, you know, with the alliances you were forging, based on which agent you send to a particular war table mission. Their success or failure would determine whether or not you can get additional missions on that particular quest line and learn some more things about like how things are progressing with that. And I like that. And you get some dialogue from some old characters like I guess if Alistair were still alive in your playthrough, I guess that's a bit of a spoiler. Sorry about that. It's not a big one, but you would get some messages from him. So all good stuff. The downside of the war table missions is a lot of them take way too long. Some of them, they're all in real time. I guess the good thing about that is you can go and often do things while those war table missions are going on. You can also send agents to gather resources for crafting. I didn't do crafting all that much, but, there it is. But some of them are in the 16-hour range for, amount of time it takes to do a mission. That can, really be troublesome or just really be annoying and, feel like, okay, I really want to use this agent to do a mission, but she's still got 7 hours to do on another one. And I guess that's all of the non-spoiler stuff, so we are now in full spoiler territory. First off, the keep. The keep was good. Getting all your past choices around, in there was good. Making sure for my playthrough, that is, my warden, survived the blight in Origins. Was romanced with Morrigan. It was good to see that Morrigan was in fact in this game, and that if you did indeed romance her, she talks about that. And you get some information about, what they've been up to since they went through the Alluvion in the Witch Hunt DLC. So that was really satisfying. And I admit, I was very, very pleased to hear that they indeed, had a good life together, even though they were, temporarily separated by circumstances. Because, I legitimately, I thought the romance with Morrigan was one of the best that BioWare's ever done in all the BioWares that I've ever played, and it felt very natural, and it was just really satisfying to hear that they didn't just hang that out to dry. Even though BioWare seems to think that the canon for your warden should be that he died in the blight. Another thing about that is, the Godchild. Yes, we got to see the Godchild. Some people thought the voice actor wasn't good. I thought he was fine. The resolution with him was very well done, especially with Flemeth. I liked that Flemeth answered a ton of questions about her and raised a lot more, and essentially, while explaining a lot of stuff, didn't really explain much of anything, which was funny and awesome and good. I guess maybe a little tad annoying. I would have liked a clearer picture, but whatever. You can't have everything answered, and clearly they're going for a sequel, I think, with that. Speaking again about the warden, I was watching another YouTuber that I've been following for a while. During the Fade mission, after you do the Adamant Fortress mission, when you're in the Fade and you see Hawk again, which was awesome. Having my Hawk there was awesome. It would have been nice if the warden could have been there too. Like this Let's Player was saying, how awesome would it be if you could have had your character, Hawk, and the warden all in the same place for one mission, even if it was just for a little bit. Like, just how awesome that would be, just tying the 3 games together. So great, just having these cameos. And instead we got Stroud, or in some cases Alistair. And, it would have been nice. It would have been really funny if the warden was there and all of his dialogue was in subtitles instead of, voice acting. It would have been a nice little, tongue-in-cheek thing at the previous game, but whatever. But it was good to know that, if you did romance Morrigan, the warden is off on another kind of quest, and you can do a war table operation. That doesn't really have much payoff with that, but whatever. The Orlesian mission was very well designed, as I said before, with kind of, the party simulator thing where you're going around trying to get court approval. The downside of that is it doesn't really feel like it's very clear when you're initially doing it as to how you're going to get the best option, or at least the option that you want, with choosing who is going to lead or lay from this point forward. And if you're kind of just going through the motions, you can very, very easily get railroaded into ultimate decision, which is probably not the decision that you wanted. But it was still, I was pretty satisfied with my choice. I mean, if I could do it better, I would go back, and kind of just get a walkthrough and just really make sure I've got everything lined up to get the perfect choice for me. But it wasn't too bad, and I was willing to live with that decision. I wasn't going to do a save reload or whatever on that. So I talked about the ball. The Illuvians mission was good, enjoyable. So I guess now we're going to the companions. The companions are good, very good. Again, I would say the overall cast is just a tick below Origins. There was only one that I wasn't overly interested in. For reference, it's Vivian. I felt like Vivian's interestingness kind of ended after a few dialogue options. It's so like, okay, I've pretty much learned everything I need to know about you. And then it came to her mission, and I wasn't really sure how to do her mission. It's just like, I can't be bothered. I don't really care about you that much. There was a lot of depth to the characters. I felt like a lot of the characters are wearing masks, like figurative masks, that is. And this is another thing that I think does endear it to replay values, because I'm going through on an additional playthrough and listening to little subtleties about the character's voice acting, where you get little hints about their mess now. And, it's just fun to go back, a la, sort of like a Fight Club, like a Fight Club situation where you watch it again. You're like, oh yeah, like here's some little hints or something. Like Blackwall is a good example of this, where, after I knew what his deal was, going back and the subtlety in his voice acting, again, like you can get hints that, he's not exactly what he seems to be. Same thing with Solus was another good example. So yeah, cast was very good. I guess now finally we're coming to Corypheus. Corypheus was a great villain. He had a lot of presence. The music helped out a lot with that too, and the voice acting was very good. There was a lot of depth to his voice. He spoke with a lot of power, a lot of presence. I found myself not necessarily sympathizing with him, but I understood his motivations a lot. And I'm definitely in agreement with some other people that have talked about the game, where Corypheus is very much a parallel to us, where we as the Inquisition see a world that is clearly, has a lot of problems, and the only way it's going to get fixed is if somebody steps in and is like, we're fixing this, help us or get out of the way. Corypheus is almost very much like that in the same way, except he is like, I'm going to fix this by just taking control of everything and becoming a god, because this world needs a god. And this is also compounded by the fact that he feels betrayed by he should have seen a god when he breached the Golden City, which it's debatable whether or not he actually did that. We don't know that for sure. But I definitely thought that added a lot of depth to his character, and he wasn't just this, boogeyman or whatever. The final boss, as I said, the glitching was not fun. That kind of took me out of the experience a little bit, and it could have been, a little less easy. I think I only took 4 health potions during the whole thing, but it was still suitably epic. The music was very good. Again, it's the thing with music, I feel like music just doesn't play enough, because when the music does play, it's awesome. The soundtrack is amazing. All the music in the story missions is great, and especially in the final boss, it's awesome, and it's not there enough. Killing the dragon finally was satisfying. Fighting him was satisfying. At first, his closing lines, I was not a fan of. I thought, okay, now he's just gonna whine like a little bitch or whatever, or like, cry out to like the old gods or whatever. But afterward, after really thinking about it, I thought there was a lot. I really understood what he was saying, that, he's like, I'm so close to, finally doing this, and I can't possibly be defeated now. And so he's just in a desperate situation. He's like, dude, if their gods do exist, if there's any chance that the gods exist, come to my aid now, because this is not right, and we have to fix this world now. Like, so please help me, or whatever. He didn't say it exactly like that. He said it much more eloquently than I did, but I thought that was good. The debrief, the ending debrief, I'll call it, with all your party members was satisfying. Talking with everybody, like Sarah and Dorian's little debrief was awesome. Dorian and Sarah are great characters. I forgot to mention that. Their dialogue is always awesome. Iron Bowls was awesome. Cassandra was awesome. I found myself liking Cassandra a lot. I didn't expect to like her. I actually had her as my romance option, so I was very surprised with that. Josephine, Liliana. I feel like we should have had more input on the choosing of the divine thing. I think there's no other option but Liliana at the end, where it seemed like you were going to have a choice and you didn't. But whatever. I mean, I think it worked out for the best. The epilogue, while satisfying in that, it told you the results of, your major choices in the game, and how that is going to impact the possible sequel, which I assume is definitely going to happen, or the DLC, which is probably definitely going to happen. I would have liked to have seen more of my smaller choices, like maybe with some of the side quests that actually did feel like they had depth, or, meaning to the story or something like that. A la Origins, a lot of your side quest decisions actually made their way into the epilogue. In this game, not the case. So it was just a little lacking in that regard. And that was pretty much everything. Like I said, very good game. I would be lying if I said I didn't enjoy the experience, but again, like Zero Punctuation said, it feels like you're weighed down by a lot of little things, and the tiny irritating things in the game, like the jumping thing, like the scanning thing, like the constantly needing to micromanage everything with my characters, is constant throughout the entire experience. And it's kind of like, you're just walking and you've got like an itch that you can't get to, or like a rock in your shoe or something like that. And that kind of just weighs down the game a little bit for me. So it's not perfect. And there are no perfect games. I was going to give it like a 7.5 because of those negative things, and the crashing, of course, and the bugs, the dialogue skipping bugs. But after replaying it and like really enjoying the story again upon replays a lot more than I thought, I'm willing to bump it up to an 8, which I think is a pretty solid score. I'm not going to get into the details of how I do my scoring system for my first review, but that's what I thought of the game. Go out and play it. Again, I'll just say, like I said, the replay thing and the fact that it's a massive game means that we're probably not going to finish our playthrough on the channel. We've got a few videos up of our first look at it with the Canary Warrior playthrough, but just with all the side quests that you have to do, it just doesn't really make good for a Let's Play, I think. This is more of a game that you play by yourself. Possibly we'll get back to it, but I'm not sure. But I hope you guys enjoyed this review. Again, it's my first crack at long, in-depth reviewing. So, guys, if you liked it, like, comment, subscribe, check out some of our Let's Play videos, and I'm going to probably be doing more types of these kind of discussion videos in the future. So if you enjoyed the sound of my ramblings, if you don't, I would not blame you, but I'm going to shut up now before I continue to ramble. Okay, bye.